What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Today, we have a very special guest this morning. We have weather girl Danny on for an interview. How are you doing, Danny?
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Pat. I'm actually doing really great and very pumped up with, all the activity we have going on right now in the tropics.
Yes, of course. I'm with you 100%. Let's go ahead and start with the breaking news that we have right here. Beryl is a Category 3 hurricane as of right now. Latest public advisory has this down to up to a 115 mile per hour hurricane, pressure of 968 millibars, moving west at 21 miles per hour, which that's a pretty fast movement for a tropical cyclone. I just wanted to go ahead and start and ask for your take on just how rapidly this whole thing is escalating.
I mean, yeah, it just went downhill like over the past few days because I mean at one point we just had the ensembles picking up on it earlier last week, and then the models they just started to slowly hop onto it to say, yeah, we're gonna see something developing, and here a record-breaking hurricane right now just to the of the Windward Islands. So the rate of intensification that has been absolutely tremendous over the past day or so since it became a named storm. So just my
Yeah.
especially
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Another thing I'm watching is Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance. We finally got two planes out there right now as we're filming this interview right now. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a reconnaissance on my end very quickly just to kind of give you an overview of what we're finding so far. Right now, from what they have seen, is they found a pressure of 964 millibars in there, and they do have a dropsund from one of the planes of potentially up to 113 knot flight level winds. Which, if that would verify, I believe that would be either at or very close to Category 4 strength. What's your thoughts on this incoming reconnaissance that's going on right now?
I think that we finally got the planes going in there because that's something that we've lacked. And honestly, when Beryl even just became a hurricane, and even earlier this morning, I kind of had my doubts about it being a Cat 2 because of just how impressive it was looking, and that eye wall really developing as well earlier in the morning. So I think that because it is in somewhat of a very favorable environment right now, the record temperatures, which many of us have been talking about since last year, and then that continued into this year. So that, as well as the minimal amount of dry air that's ahead of it, and the favorable shear, that is
Yeah.
like
I'm glad you mentioned the dry air because I was on stream a couple of nights ago and I was watching this, and we saw a massive burst of convection from another tropical wave that essentially just cleared out the entire path of dry air from now, at least until we get to the Lesser Antilles. So we actually caught this on Pat's Path Predictor stream a couple of nights ago. So I'm really glad you brought that up because this is something I think everyone should be concerned about that's going to be impacted by this. So yeah, is there anything else you would like to add before we move on to the next part of the interview when it comes to that?
well, not quite. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the dry air, the wind shear, the warm temps. Like, yeah, that's basically it that I had to say about that part of it.
All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and start with the Lesser Antilles. I know you are in Jamaica and you are in the path of this right now, but because the Antilles, as of the next 48 hours, are in the greater threat right now, and Jamaica is a little ways away. I want to go ahead and start with that first, so our audience tuning in from there can kind of get your take and what's going on over there. I don't think a lot of people expected this to see this being a Category 3 hurricane already, potentially up to Cat 4 with the Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance. We'll have to see on that part of it. What's your biggest what's your biggest thing you would tell people right now that they're seeing this whole thing? What should they be doing, and what's your take on this in general? Let's start with that.
Well, I mean, the key thing right now is really to prepare because there's just today. After today, like there's no going back. There's no, doing additional things to get ready. It's really now when people should be ensuring that they have all their plans in place. If they're in areas that flood very easily, if they're near the coast, now is the time to get out and listen to the local officials there. And I believe, I'm not sure if it is Dominica, where there is a shutdown across the island because everyone is preparing for Beryl. But it's really just prep mode right now and finalizing things by before the day ends so that everyone can safely ride out the storm because this is no joke. And I also think that have been some persons that were underestimating what Beryl would actually be. And here we have it now, headed towards category 4 intensity. So it's really just to prepare and finalize everything for today. There's no time to be ifing and butting about it because it's finalized. Like it's getting stronger and stronger. It's already a very dangerous hurricane and one of the strongest since Ivan, or the strongest since Ivan, to going
Yeah.
to, for the area. So yeah, it's really just to everything and get ready to hunker down for it because it's going to be backing off. But the good thing, as you mentioned earlier, it's moving quite quickly, so it's not going to be meandering around there for very long. So I'm kind of happy about that part of it.
Yeah, I'm happy about that part too. You were mentioning Dominica. I believe they are under a tropical storm watch as right now. I'm checking the public advisory. Yes, they are under a tropical storm watch. But there are so many islands to the south of that are under hurricane warnings: Barbados, Saint Lucia, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Tobago. Tropical storm warning in effect for Martinique. I'm not. This is pretty interesting. Taking a look at this, you're seeing all these hurricane warnings right now. What's your for those in the hurricane warning areas and the tropical storm warning areas? What's your thoughts on all this? What do you think people should be doing right now? You've been mentioning preparing, but could you go more specific for both of those criterion?
Well, first of all, I actually just remembered that the shutdown. I believe it's for Saint Lucia. I think I
Okay.
glimpsed the news. But in terms of preparations, I believe that people should be stocking up on the non-perishable items, clean water, because we know that with the such an intense hurricane, some of the clean water sources could become polluted, and that could give rise to waterborne diseases, which we don't want any of that.
No, we
So
don't.
yeah, so storing the clean water for a couple of days, having the non-perishable food items, and also, caring for their pets, getting pet food, things like that, because we can't leave them out. And also to, if it is a case where they have to evacuate, go to the nearest shelter just to ride out the storm. Have all the essentials, the important files and documents, personal documents in a waterproof container or a bag or something, just to make sure that everything is all set and ready. And in the case where, it's kind of the worst case scenario, then it wouldn't be much of a loss. So that is why I would definitely recommend those actions. And also for people who have a lot of trees around, trees are very beneficial and helpful. But when those branches tear off, tremendous damage to property and even life as well. So those are just a couple of steps that can be made throughout today for those persons already, because again, it's a very major situation that is and will deteriorate as we get throughout the rest of today and throughout.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned the tree parts of it because I've been if you've been paying attention, one thing I've been paying attention to right now is the flash flooding threat. Not because of Beryl, but because of the invest behind that. Because I've made this point clear. Essentially, what Beryl will do is, I'm glad you mentioned trees, because what they do is they allow for the ground deeper down, for more rain to need to saturate the ground, because that's kind of how geography works. The roots help keep the soils and all that firm and allow for a deeper saturation point. So that's the concern I have with the flash flooding threat. What's your thoughts on that kind of potential, especially as we get into the parts of the Antilles that could see potentially up to 6 inches of rain with this?
Oh, I mean, like especially those areas that are kind of more on, like in the hillier areas as well. Like that is where I think there's going to be a major threat of the heavy rain because there are even rivers running through some areas, springs, other water sources. So it's more likely that there will be some major flooding around. And That's just awful because, I mean, the flood in the water, it is always the main concern with any of our tropical cyclones out there, any hurricane. I mean, the storm surge is going to be one thing, but then the torrential rains as well, that's going to be another thing. So that is going to pose a serious threat to life and property as well as we head into the next day or so for the Windward Islands.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, because of the rapid intensification of the storm, one thing I am very concerned about right now, especially as we're only 24 hours out from landfall, is an eyewall replacement cycle. Typically, what those do is weaken the system, but at a cost because they can, in many cases, greatly expand the storm size. Which this is not a very large system. The tropical storm force winds only go about 70 or 80 miles out from the center of circulation. Have you been paying attention to that ERC threat? And if so, what do you think this could be a possibility considering how quickly this thing is intensifying?
Yeah, I definitely think that we would soon see a full blown eye wall replacement cycle. And as you said, like it would allow it to weaken, but also help the storm itself to get bigger in size, which would allow for more areas to be in that threat zone, like for the impacts of the tropical storm force winds, the heavy rain as well, which may trigger flooding. And also, one thing that I notice a lot with the eye wall replacement cycles when they do happen is the fact that after the cycle is completed, sometimes you see a drastic change in the intensity for the worse. Even though it may temporarily weaken the cyclone, after like once the conditions are favorable,
Yeah,
it can lead to hurricane, even Dorian, I believe, back in 2019. So that's another concern with the ERCs. That happened.
yeah. Thank you for that. So essentially, the Leeward Islands are a big threat with this right now. Next threat on the chopping block, I would say this thing is an absolute buzzsaw right now. Jamaica, which is your home country home country, and I want your take on what the potential threat could be for Jamaica, because right now they're not under any watches or warnings, but looking at the cone right now from my end, it does appear that they're going to get somewhere between a Category 3 or Category 2 hurricane at the time of recording this video. That is subject to change, and we'll have to keep an eye on it, but what's your take right now with what's going on with the potential threat to Jamaica?
Well, I definitely think that there could be a problem for us because, I mean, it would all be dependent on the intensity of Beryl. Like if it surpasses what the NH shows in the realm of the intensity of it, if it becomes a stronger Category 4 hurricane than what they're expecting, quickly as they would expect, then
Yeah.
I think that would be a threat because we've got the high pressures that are kind of steering it to the west. That's kind of the steering mechanism right now. But afterwards, once it enters and it's going to move to the west northwest, if it weakens rather slowly due to the increase in wind shear, then we could see it coming closer to Jamaica than what some of the models have been showing. And actually, I believe it was the early runs today, the 0Z runs and the 6Z runs for like GFS and Euro taking it a bit closer compared to like yesterday. So I believe that we could have anywhere between a Category 2, Category 3 hurricane, if not being very close to landfall, being close enough to allow for some watches and even some warnings to be issued. So that is what I really think. But as you said, things are subject to change. It's not a must, but it is a possibility that we can't ignore because if it is headed straight towards us, I genuinely don't think that we would be ready to take on
Yeah.
a major just below major hurricane intensity. So we should definitely be keeping a very close watch. And we should see what will happen with it as we head into tomorrow and even into early Tuesday as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to bring up 2 points right now that I'm just looking at right now. I have the track models pulled up on my end of the recording right here. It looks like it'll be very close to your island according to the spaghetti plot I'm looking at. In the next 72 to 72 to 84 hours. I'm a little bit all over the place this morning because of everything that's going on. A similar track I've noticed with this, though, and I've seen this comparison a little bit in my Discord server, is that of maybe Hurricane Dean back in 2007, which was, I believe, a Category 4 hurricane as it moved very close to to Jamaica and caused a lot of agricultural damage. It was a pretty famous case down in the Caribbean Sea. What's your thoughts on this being potentially a similar track to that? I'm not saying we're not going to say anything about intensity because we don't know yet, but what's your thoughts on a potential track similar to that?
Well, I think that it is very much possible, but again, it would depend on that high pressure that's over the eastern U.S. right now. It's been quite persistent there. So, I mean, there's some of the models that have shown it, just going off to the west and stayed well south of Jamaica really. And I mean, it's a possibility that is on the table as well. But a lot can determine that between today, what happens with Beryl today, and into tomorrow as well. I feel like there are just so many things happening that will really determine the eventual track of it. But a Dean-like track is definitely possible.
Yeah, definitely is. So, next question I have for you is we're still, like I said, about a little more than 72 hours out from impact. That means hurricane watches will probably not be issued for maybe another 12 to 24 hours or so. When those hurricane watches do get issued for Jamaica, what is your best advice you can give to the people that live there to prepare for this? Because this is a very extraordinary event happening in late June and early July.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we would see in September. And, being from Jamaica, there are many people here who would say that, you guys say these things every year. Oh, nothing is coming. Well, I'm going to kind of say it in, or Jamaica. Listen to me, this is something I'm not something wrong with.
Mm-hmm.
This is take seriously. We are under a hurricane watch. We cannot, just use the past to determine what's going to happen. Beryl, this is not another hurricane that passed south. It's not Ian of 2022. It's not Matthew, which missed us and made landfall in Haiti. This is Beryl. So it's better to be safe than sorry. And if it is a case where we are indeed under a hurricane watch and, depending on how close it is, maybe upgraded to a hurricane warning, we have to take the necessary precautions. We have to do what we must to prepare. Some of these steps I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Windward Islands, that's what we will have to do. So we should definitely not take it lightly because we're talking about an unprecedented hurricane here that may try to hold on to its major hurricane status for quite some time, even as it gets closer to us. So it's not something that we should ignore. It's not something we must be blind to. And then, eventually when impacts arrive, then it's going to be, oh, I wish I had done this. So we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yep.
So if we're under, we should take it very seriously and do all we can to make sure that we're going to protect ourselves and our loved ones as well.
All right, so my final question on this topic is, what's the best advice you can give to the island of Jamaica that will be tuning into this video? The people who are in Jamaica that are watching this, what's the best advice you can give them?
One of the best advice to give is really to stay updated and to spread the word, for what is happening right now, because it is the smoke to the fire. It's June. We're just closing down on the month, and we have the peak of the hurricane season coming up September. And if we're seeing this now, we can only imagine how much more intense things are going to get as we head into August, September, even October and November as well. So the best advice is to really stay updated as best as possible. Tune in. There are many of us on YouTube who are covering what's happening across the tropics on a daily basis, especially when there's something out there right now, such as Beryl. So the best thing is really to stay updated, stay on top of things. We're covering that for you. So that is one of the best ways to ensure that you're not caught off guard during this hurricane season, because it's definitely not one to be messed around with. It will definitely be an active one, and we're seeing that happening already.
All right, thank you for that. And the last topic I want to go over briefly right here is potentially the threat afterward. I've been looking at some of the computer models potentially having this thing making landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula. Some of the models even afterward having this making landfall in the U.S., which I'm not even considering right now, considering how far out that is. But for those kind of areas that are kind of maybe in this path that are concerned about this, what are your thoughts on all this? Because I've been looking at conditions. They're a bit iffy. There might be a bit of an increase of wind shear with this. What's your take on this after Jamaica?
Well, I definitely think that, the Yucatan towards Belize, they should be keeping watch, but there's nothing definitive right now, because as you said, it's kind of far out. I mean, Beryl has not even entered the Caribbean seas yet. So we're bound to see a lot of changes. And even as we look at the spaghetti models as well, we would notice that after a certain time further out, they kind of spread in all different directions because of just how uncertain things are. So the impacts there are definitely possible, but it's not a guarantee. So it's really just to, keep an eye on things as we head throughout the rest of this week or throughout the majority of the week, and then we'll get a better idea, a better feel of what is going to be happening. But for now, it is not to say that, yes, there is going to be a major hurricane hidden. As you said, conditions are not looking as though they may be the most conducive to allow for all that intensification to happen. So it's really just to keep an eye on what happens with it over the course of the coming days, and then we'll know for sure who makes the next target after it comes either over Jamaica or very close to Jamaica.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. I was looking at the track models once again. Actually, you're right. They're right right before it gets to Jamaica, you're starting to see that split happen, and even though the models are pretty tightly packed until then, they start spreading out quite a bit. So my final question for you right now is, what's the best thing that people can be doing that's in the Yucatan, on the coast of Mexico, that's maybe even in Texas right now, that have been in my comment section worried about this?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not something that, we want to just overlook to say that, hey, we're not talking about it now, we're not focusing on it now. We should keep watch because it's potentially coming into the area means that, there would be impacts either from it maybe as a tropical storm or a weak hurricane. So that is on the table as well. So what is, the general preparations for the hurricane season on a whole, which some of us have done that, some of us haven't. So just to get certain things in place, should in case there are impacts, I think that would be the best thing to do for right now. But I wouldn't say like, it is coming for certain. You must do all of these preparations because we're not sure of what is going to be happening just yet. So the best thing that can be done is for persons to just pay attention to what is going on right now and make the general preparation so that, they're not caught off guard either whenever the system is going to be moving into their area, if it is going to be moving into their area.
All right. Thank you very much, Danny. We appreciate your taking time out of your day to come on to the Pat's Path Predictor channel to go on for an interview. I think we got a lot of insightful thinking, especially for the Antilles and Jamaica that are in the path of this system. I really appreciate you coming on.
Most welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me again. It's been my pleasure to share my insights on what I think could happen and what's going on right now, really. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the interview with Weather Girl Danny. We will have an afternoon update video at 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, and then we will have a live stream at 9 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time to go over the latest updates. I really hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more interviews and videos like these. The goal of this channel, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.